So, welcome everybody to this very first local to global event where we are opening the space for the WEAll hubs located in many different countries, regions, and states around the world. We're going to have the opportunity to showcase the work that they're advancing, the work that they're doing. And my name is Ana Gomez. I am the network co-lead for the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, WEAll. I share this role with my colleague Tobile, who is in the room and is going to be helping me a little bit with the allowing people in. You probably have met Tobile as well in other spaces. She's always hosting the WEAll talks and she's welcoming the membership while I am supporting the creation and development of WEAll hubs around the world. So thank you so much for joining us today around this very special topic that WEAll Scotland is bringing to us, building a wellbeing economy with children and young people. We are really, really excited to have this conversation, and we're really, really excited to have Frances Rayner as our speaker today and the person who's going to be bringing this conversation. If you remember the graphics and the invitation, there was another person, my colleague Lisa Stewart, but sadly she is feeling very unwell today and she has not been able to make it. She really apologizes because she was so excited about this first WEAll local to global, but I'm positive we will have the opportunity to meet her in other spaces. But super grateful for Frances to be here to initiate the conversation. I want to remind everybody that this local to global, as the WEAll talks, is a participatory event. So Frances is going to be bringing awareness about the Love Lesson Project and this topic of involving children and young people in decision-making spaces. But there's going to be enough time for all of us to do the sharings of what we are ourselves involved as well, and raising awareness of other things that are happening around the world. So stay tuned and make sure that you can drop all your questions in the chat, but then there's going to be a space as well for unmuting yourself and sharing with your own voice. And now we're going to start by asking you a very concrete question. Basically, what I want to take you all to that childhood. I think that's the right word in English. I would like to ask you to reflect, if you remember when you were a child, what you were hoping for, what was a dream that you were hoping for the future. I would love to connect with that part of yourselves, to think about it. If you do remember, if you would like to share it, you could leave it in the chat, or you could unmute yourself and you want to share it in case you would like to share it with your own voice. But I'm going to just give a minute for us to connect with the child in ourselves before we initiate the conversation. So just think a little bit. What do you hope for? What do you dream for the future when you were a child? Travel the world, to travel in order to meet other cultures, to be happy, to always be happy. Wow. Nice. To live by the seaside. I wanted to be a policewoman. Nice, Tobile. I wanted to study O's. I only later learned that an ornithologist is the term for this. I love it, Alicia. I love it. Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, I thought technology would be ultra futuristic and make the world a perfect place, like a utopia sci-fi world. For flying cars and a tech-forward world, inspired for the future movies. I do remember those as well, Tassi. For wars to stop. Oh my God, Caroline. Yeah, totally. Everything to be colorful and covered in paint. Nice. I love that, Snow. I love it. Well, thank you. Thank you for to be able to play with my friends outside every day. Yes, the outdoors. My goodness, I do remember that as well. I was so impacted about the vastness of the universe. Always so curious about what's out there. I understand, Nella. Yeah, always beautiful out there. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. Thank you for connecting with your child. And now I'm just going to give the floor and the mic to Frances. And again, thank you everybody for participating today. Frances, welcome.
Thanks, Anna. It's so lovely to be here with you all. I'm hoping you can hear me okay. Just shout if you can't. So I think this is the first local to global event, right? So it's the first time I'm meeting a lot of you. So I'm the communications lead in the Scotland hub. So I've been in post for about 16 months now, and I'm the first kind of paid comms role they've had. So it's quite exciting. But for 2 days a week last year, I was working not just on comms, but on this project that I'm going to be talking about today on children's wellbeing budgets. And as Anna said, sadly, Lisa is ill today. So luckily, I worked completely on the project, so I know everything about it, but I'm just stepping in to cover some of her bits. So please bear with me if I refer to my slides on some of the detail that she's kind of been leading on. But yeah, without further ado, I'll share my slides. I'll talk for about 10 minutes or so and not go into too much detail. So we've got a lot of chance for people to kind of raise questions, and we can focus on what's of most interest for you and hear about your experiences as well. I don't know if you can see that my PowerPoint hasn't loaded properly. I'm just going to close it and open it again. Sorry, we actually tested this directly before the call, and as always,
it was working. Can you try again?
Yeah, I'm just shutting it down and starting again. So fingers crossed.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that looks better to me.
Yes.
Great. Are you seeing the actual slides rather than the overview?
We see the overview.
Okay. So is it as it should be, just one slide?
No.
Oh. Oh goodness, sorry. We literally just tested this. I'll try it again. And if not, I've also got them on Google Slides. So
but Frances, it's very clear, even though it's smaller. Yeah, but okay. It's very clear.
Okay. Try one more time, and if not, I'll just carry on like that.
Okay.
Can you see the big slide now?
You mean just one? No.
Just one intro slide.
We see the local to global wellbeing, and then we see everybody, all the other ones in the left.
Are they just small?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you can still see it. It works to present like this, do you think?
I would just go. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's fine.
Okay, great. Okay, sorry about that. So this event is intended primarily for hub members. So some of you will be very familiar with some of the kind of principles that I'm talking about, but we've got a lot of outside visitors as well, which is great. So excuse me if I kind of repeat some concepts and projects that you might have even, written the documents yourself and that kind of thing. So to kick off, this project really started the summer of 2021, when I know a lot of you will probably be familiar with the Wellbeing Economy Alliance Policy Design Guide, which was created to help policymakers think through a process they can follow to create really participatory, visionary, long-term policy making. So as part of that guide, after the guide was created, we worked with 4 WEAll hubs in Scotland, Canada, California, and New Zealand to create pilots to put this guide into practice, partly to kind of deliver real world change, but also to try and capture learnings about what's kind of working when we try and put this into practice, so that we could continue to shape the guide and make it practical for people. Because this kind of policy making is quite iterative and experimental, we were deliberate in wanting to kind of try new things and really capture those learnings and be able to bring those back to the network. And that's all been done in partnership with the Zoe Institute. So there was a lot of kind of shared learning between the hubs during this process. And I'll share more about it at the end, but with the Zoe Institute, we've created a website as well to put a lot of the resources that we've developed together, so that you've got more than the kind of toolkit that we had, and that will continue to be developed. So just to double check that this is working enough, that can you see the slide? Oh, Anna, sorry, you're on mute.
Right. We only see the first one. You need to move it down to the second one. And,
so what I'm going to do is stop share and try sharing it slightly differently, because there was a bit before where I think you could see it, but you could see all the
yeah, the second one.
Do you at least see the map, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is better than nothing, right? Okay, and now you're seeing the policy design guide principles. Yep. Okay, great. That'll do, hopefully. Sorry about this, everyone. Yeah, many of you will be familiar with the policy design guide, but it has these kind of five stages in the process, and you'll see this is deliberately not linear, because these processes aren't linear, but there's visioning, strategy, the policies that come from that, the implementation and evaluation. But perhaps more important than that is the design guide, design principles behind this. So wellbeing economy policy should be goal orientated, like everything focused on the goal of collective well-being on a healthy planet. It should be experimental, trying new methods, evidence-based, fully participatory, really involving communities that are normally or too often outside of decision-making processes. It should be contextual, so there's no one-size-fits-all way of doing this stuff. It has to be rooted absolutely in the local context. It should be holistic, so bringing environmental and societal social objectives together. And it should be strengths-based, so based on creating the best possible outcomes in communities from a sort of visionary standpoint, and based on the strengths of communities, rather than just looking at problems to kind of fix and solve. So yeah, a lot of the policy design guide is about the kind of process of how the policy making should happen. And so now I'm going to just talk about how we put this into practice in Letham. So we came up with a project, Love Letham, in partnership with one of the local authorities, Perth and Kinross Council. So we let local authorities basically pitch to partner with us on this in Scotland, and we chose Perth and Kinross based on the strength of their proposal and the synergy with kind of internal processes that were going on, and their willingness and intention to really make sure policies were working for everyone in the community, and also drawing on the assets and knowledge and experience of everyone in the community. So there's a really good synergy there. So we've done the project really in partnership with them. And it really came out of this project, not just the policy design guide, but also a report that was done by the Carnegie UK in partnership with Catherine Trebek, our WEAll colleague and co-founder, who many of you all know, on children's wellbeing budgets, and looking at a kind of really preventative approach to policy making that's rooted in children's experiences and what children need to thrive. So this project was all about not just participatory, visionary, long-term goals, but really rooting that in specifically children's voices, not just community members' voices, but children themselves. So it's been quite an exciting and experimental project to work on for that reason. So I'm just going to talk you through quickly the kind of stages we went through in the process, and then go into a little bit more detail. So firstly, again, I can't do my animation because it's not showing properly, but so you see everything at once, unfortunately. But yeah, so first we did a really big visioning exercise with children and young people to find out what really matters to them. What does a good life look like to them? How could we make Letham the best place to grow up? And we talked, and I say we, so we worked in partnership. A lot of this was delivered through Northern Star Associates, and they did a fantastic job of designing this programme. And they managed to do visioning exercises with hundreds of children and young people and families in the area, and actually covered like 25% of children and young people who directly participate in this visioning exercise, so that from the outset this is absolutely rooted in what the children in the community actually want to see. And then from there we got a huge pool of data, And then we recruited a diverse set of commissions of children, young people, and decision makers. And originally the idea was we would have a commission of young children, and then a commission of, say, older children, young people, and adults. But what we found was, because we really wanted to kind of be bringing people with different kind of experience and different kind of levels of power together, so everything was co-created. But what we found was young people said they preferred to have their own space and work independently before bringing their ideas to adults. So we create these 3 different commissions. So in the schools, there are 3 primary schools in the area, and each of them created their own commission. And we gave the kids that were involved money for them to spend on something in their school as they saw fit, to kind of reward them fairly for their time on the project. And then we had commissions. We recruited a commission of adults that included cross-party representatives from the local elected councillors and senior staff, so people, just one level below from the chief executive in the council, and then a wide range of quite a diverse audience of local residents and people who are involved in local agencies, for example, the health service and community safety and that kind of thing. And the idea was really so that we're not doing kind of like communities coming up with ideas and then taking it to people with power, and then it just kind of gets shut down or becomes a bit of a campaign, but that from the outset, people with power are sitting on a level playing field while the ideas and the solutions are being co-created. And that really has meant that the people with power have been really invested throughout the process, and they can also inform us of real world, like policy things that are going on at the moment and that kind of thing. And it's one of the things people really commented on, that they really appreciated that this adults commission had such a diverse range of voices in it, and everyone was on a level playing field, and they really felt that they left their positions at the door, and people would often be quite frank in our conversations. And then we had a 3rd commission, which was young people. And because there was a really active kind of like youth group in the area, we found it was actually worked a bit better for us to just do visioning exercises directly through that group, rather than we didn't have much success when we tried to create a separate process. And I think there's a learning in that, communities get consulted a lot on things, and there's a bit of fatigue, and we definitely found that at the start of the process, is people were a bit skeptical about whether it was actually going to lead to anything changing, because they'd maybe been involved in exciting pilots before, and shared their views and not really seen any change. So we're really mindful of that all the way through, and that's one of the reasons it was really bringing the people with power through the whole process, so that made that much less likely to happen. We had these 3 commissions, and then the commissions really independently really sifted through the vast amounts of data that we got from our exercises with children and young people, which I'll speak to in a minute, and kind of identified themes. So yeah, I'll talk through a bit of that process. So I think the really fun part of the project is the visioning exercises with children and young people. So I think some people are a bit kind of curious or skeptical about how are you going to ask really young people to come up with well-being goals. If you ask them what they want, won't they just say they want to travel the world, I think someone said earlier, or like toys and sweets. But we were all, even those of us who really committed to this approach were really quite taken aback by the kind of level of altruism and sophistication in really young children's visions, and I think that's down to them, but also the exercises that were created that really helped get children thinking in that kind of long-term, what do they want a good community to look like. So we undertook a couple of creative exercises, and if you're interested in using these kind of practices yourself, we've got resources on the website, and I'll talk to the end. So a couple of things we did were, and this was largely through existing kind of nursery groups and things, rather than us kind of coming in as strangers and delivering these exercises, but things like small world observed play, where facilitators would get children to kind of map parts of their community and talk about how they spent their day and which places they liked and they didn't like, and that kind of thing for very young children. Another really lovely exercise, which sort of echoes a bit what Anna did earlier, was we asked children to sit on like this magic carpet, and this imaginary magic carpet, take a ride to the future, and you look at your community and what it could look like, and how wonderful it could be, and what would that look like. So that all like garnered some really rich testimony. So just to give you a flavour of that, I mean, this is really quite small because the way you're seeing my slides, but we got really beautiful, we've got permissions to share all of this, but really beautiful kind of like illustrations and drawings and text, really moving things about the kind of changes people want to see, and then quite a large degree of continuity as well in what children were saying. We got children to talk about the places they feel safe and all the things that make them feel good. And I'll just share, I won't read everything out, but there was one, I think it was an 8-year-old child shared her vision of Lethem, and it was amazing because the adults had been working on this stuff, looking at the original, like looking at the data for a while, and when we came across this, everyone just immediately said, well, we know what our vision is, it's exactly this, she's just nailed it. So I see a clean, happy environment, the sight of children laughing and having fun, a local cafe and shops. I'd hear people having a good time and being sociable, the sound of people at a dance club and other activities, happy, kind people being nice. That's how I'd like Lethem to be. So yeah, really, it was a fantastic experience, and really all the adults, because when we first started, sometimes adults coming to the process, you know, were doing so because they were very invested in their community and they had a strong sense of what needed to change. But through this process of kind of all spending so much time with the children's kind of testimony and visions, people became so committed to making the children's priorities our priorities, and that was really wonderful to see. Real intergenerational work as well. So that's kind of some of the raw data we saw at the beginning of the process. And then what we did was, so the Adults Commission, you know, met kind of 7 times over the course of the year. And the first few sessions, we just kind of established ground rules, got to know each other, talked about kind of our understandings of well-being and our community and our power and place within it. And then we started kind of trying to find themes and like merging priorities from the data itself. And at the same time, the children were doing the same. So the children were working, there were 3 commissions in each of the primary schools, and then they all came together so they had worked through the data themselves, and then they all came together to then share their priorities together and come up with a shared vision themselves that they then presented to adults. So this is the vision. We've got this like illustrated, and this kind of brought together what the children's commissions were saying they were seeing as the emerging priorities and how they saw Lethem in the future. So we've got, and one of the things that was really, everyone was really moved by was the how altruistic the children were, and it was so really concerned about homelessness and having people's basic needs met, better housing and that kind of thing. They wanted community connection, places that people could gather safely and play, and they really wanted more access to kind of nature and animals and better access to local services. And at the same time, the youth group that we're working with, they presented to the adults. When I say when they presented to the adults, they presented to the Adults Commission and the chief executive of the council and other like senior staff in kind of like in the NHS and other kind of local agencies. And then from that, so we had our vision, you know, our kind of like utopian, this is one day what it could all look like, but obviously we've got to try and find a starting point. So we like wanted to come up with one kind of priority area to focus on. So that led to quite a lot of deliberation, because it was very difficult once we had all this data saying, okay, these things really need to change. And there was so much overlap in what everyone, you know, was saying from the data. But in the end, we chose kind of 2 priority areas. We kind of tweaked it a little bit, but we did a deep dive on one. So the area that we really chose to go into most deeply was the issue of frightening and disordered behaviour. So children and young people really express not feeling safe in their communities, and not feeling like they could go out and play safely, or that there was kind of disruption in their blocks of flats stuff. So we did a big deep dive into that, and we got like local agencies to come and talk to the Commission about what services were there, how they saw the problems. We did some research ourselves just to find like what data we could find. We went back to the children and young people to get more data on, you know, where are the areas you're experiencing this, what kind of frightening and disordered behaviour. to come up with a real picture and set of recommendations. So I won't speak to all of these, but a couple of the things were about actually just creating more activities for people, because there was a perception that the lack of stuff to do was a bit of a driver for kind of frightening and disordered behaviour. And there was a lot as well about like improving services for people who might be at risk of kind of undertaking frightening and disordered behaviour. And so yeah, there were lots of different recommendations there, so I won't go into all of them. And then the next one, because it was so hard choosing a goal, we almost fell out about it. Everyone's very lovely, but it was just, you know, very important stuff. There's quite a strongly related goal as well of creating spaces and places for children and young people to sort of be safe and play and do things. So what we decided to do was actually just capture what the kind of priorities were for this. So at least if our funding didn't continue for the project, we've at least put something together to say, okay, and we also really need to look at this is what it needs to look like. So this was things more like access to nature, very simple things as well, like access to public toilets was actually one of the things that kept coming up, and not having enough bins as well. So some fairly simple things to fix there, as well as more kind of significant long-term changes. So that's the recommendation. So I'm sure you want to know what actually came of all this and what happened next. So lots of good news on this front. So firstly, it's a pilot project, and we were only funded for 1 year, but we have funding to carry on for another 2 years. So we're now in the process of kind of devising the next stage of the process, and the community seems really, really excited about that, and the commissioners have really reported enjoying the process and feeling very hopeful as well. And this is just a quote from the person she's like head of transformation and strategic planning at the council, and she said, we're just getting started with this because ultimately we want to use this across the council. So this work is partly about not just going, okay, so kids want bins, we need to make sure there's bins, but actually helping show how you could create policy differently and helping support the council to kind of think through what that's going to look like and what it's going to involve. So that part of it has been really great, in that they are absolutely committed to doing this, and there's huge enthusiasm from other local agencies and the elected councillors as well. So we're just designing the second process part now, but just this week we got some really exciting news, because one of the things, I didn't really go into it there, but when we're talking about recommendations and solutions to frightening and disordered behaviour, people said there just actually aren't enough adults or people you know around when you want to you know, play. There's no one there safe to kind of keep an eye out or like stop people getting in trouble. And there used to be more of a presence from like local community safety wardens, and that's kind of been stripped back over the years. So we're really keen to involve everyone involved in kind of policing and community safety. And just this week we found out that off the back of this, they actually did pitch, and this is amazing in a time of everything being cut, that they pitched for a community safety warden for the area, and that's come through. So I haven't actually, there's so much on this week, but I haven't actually emailed the commissioners yet to tell them, but it'll be fantastic. They'll be so pleased when they hear that that's actually happened. So it's really, I think one learning for me is that if you're doing this long-term transformational change, you're talking about things like poverty and really long-term problems, but communities do need to see that some of the things that are just very obvious and easy-ish fixes just need to happen, because they might have been saying these things for a really long time and not seeing any change. So that's been really wonderful. And then in terms of the council and how they talk about what's changing and their plan, so they're establishing a new team who, it might work better than this in other places, but often the way local authorities work is like not always rooted at a very local level, because they cover quite a big area. But they're now going to create a team which at least brings together everyone providing services in that specific area, who can work together to address challenges. And they want to kind of, we haven't designed this process yet, but carry on working with the commission in some form and evolve the commission so that these recommendations actually all get put into place eventually. And they want to provide like a sort of single point of contact for residents. Some of this is a bit technical if you don't know like how local authorities in Scotland work, but ultimately as well, they want to roll out this model in other areas. So that's really exciting. And yeah, for them, they really see the benefit because it's more effective for them in delivering outcomes, and it's actually a better use of resources, and moves things to a more preventative approach, which I think most people working in policy making want to see, but it can sometimes be hard with the kind of day-to-day challenges. Some of the challenges and barriers to change we've encountered have been kind of ring-fenced budgets in the council. So a lot of funding is kind of allocated from the government to councils to deliver certain things, and it can make it hard to kind of be flexible with your spend, and often like teams are working kind of separately and it's hard to join up. And yeah, there's been huge financial challenges with the cost of living crisis and cuts to budgets. So yeah, it has been really difficult. There's been a bit of a capacity and resource issue, because there's all a very positive story, but I should be honest about the challenges as well, that even just getting our partners time within the council to kind of work on the project together has been kind of one of the biggest challenges of the project. But I'm really pleased with the outcome we've got to it in the end. So yeah, just before I finish, just to share, this is just a preview of, I'll drop it in the chat when I stop talking, but the resources, the website that's been put together by WEAll Global and Zoe, which helps you put the policy design guide into practice. And we've created a specific toolkit for doing visioning exercises with children and young people based on our experiences of this project. And I'm just going to end with a couple of nice things, which is just remind you of the vision, because it's so lovely. This will be too small to see, but it's a poem that one of the primary schools, one of the children worked on together, and it spells out Love Letham, the name of the project. So I thought I would just read it out. So yeah, these are children who are like under 11 years old, and they said, living in Letham is important to us. One aim to make Letham better. Vandalism is never the right answer. Everyone should listen and value opinions. Let's make Letham a better place. Everyone should be encouraged to speak up. Tell us your thoughts about your local area. Have faith in us. We can make a difference. Are you taking care of Letham? Make Letham a great place. I just thought it was really lovely. So I'm going to stop sharing. Sorry about my slides there.
That is a beautiful wrap up, Frances. I love it. I really do. Thank you.
So yeah, I'd just be keen to, one, hear any kind of like experiences that you've had that you were able to share with the group about kind of similar projects and working with children and young people on wellbeing goals. And yeah, also just here to answer any questions. I'm just opening the chat now.
Yeah, Frances. So there was one by Stephanie, and I think you answered because you just mentioned the age, that everybody was under 11. If I didn't understand, no, that's not correct. Okay, she was asking about the ages.
Yeah. So different ages. So we, so the ages. So we, very good question. So quite young. I will just double check actually quickly while we're on this call. But I think, you know, like children below primary school age, because they were doing the that's when we did the observed play exercises. So you could talk about your day, and they would just make little, you know, like a little house and a, you know, park and stuff. But for infants, we largely did that through talking to childcare providers of infants and parents of infants. So we were representing their voice, you know, so if they're like 2 years old, for example, might be quite a bit harder. But then when I was talking about that under 11, that was just that primary school's poem. But a lot of so the Children's Commission was for primary age children, so they would be between 5 and 11. And then the Young People Commission, they were more like 14 to 18. But the actual visioning exercises, we really went for like all children and young people that we could possibly reach. And actually in the next stage of the project, something we really want to focus on is how we capture infant voice. So that will be, it might even be that we have an additional commission that's specifically like just people representing infant voice.
But the adolescents, so the adolescents and stuff, were there, the vision that you showed us, the sort of drawing slides, were they kind of like, they had the same outcomes?
Yes, so they have very similar outcomes, yeah. So they presented theirs in like a PowerPoint, and what we did was, so the adults basically had their priorities, the children had their priorities, and then the adolescents had their priorities, and then we kind of, the adults brought it all together and tried to make sense of what they were going to focus on going forward. So we captured all of those priorities. So the actual, essentially all of the stuff was the same. You know, if you were to say here are the 10 areas, it would be the things that everybody said, because it was all as well based on the original data, and all of the data comes from the children. You know, there's nothing, so the original data is from visioning exercises rather than the children's commission. And those vision exercises were really focused on children. So there was a huge amount of overlap in the actual priorities that the different groups shared, but then ultimately the adults chose which one to take forward. But when they were choosing what to take forward, it was much more from the point of view of what are we going to focus on for the next couple of months that we can actually meaningfully say something about, rather than this is the priority issue. So we've really captured everything. So we've got a report on this that'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks, and that captures literally everything. So there was sometimes a bit of a difference in prioritization, but it was very, very similar.
Thank you, Frances. There was another question from Vaisno on the chat. I don't know if you would like to make it other.
Absolutely.
I
think I found it really interesting that there's such a strong link around restorative justice, as well as the critical kind of element of activities for young people. It's a huge part of our work, and that there's a really strong relationship between restorative practice and activities. So it's really cool to see that. I think the vision exercise, we're about to do something really similar soon, so I'll absolutely be using those. Thank you so much for sharing them. I wanted to ask whether the work with children and young people included those that were excluded from education.
That is such a good point. So I know it definitely, I couldn't say confidently that it did. I know that so firstly, I should say that that's partly because I didn't do the work. I was kind of more of a kind of liaison on the project and communicating with commissioners and recruiting commissioners and stuff. So I can certainly find out and get back to you, but I do know we really wanted to make sure we were reaching care experienced children, which obviously that doesn't mean anything about exclusion from education, but it was a very deliberate design of the project, that it wasn't just like, we'll just go to schools and that's where all the children will be. We were really trying to work with social services and different groups to make sure, and even within the schools as well, that they were thinking about like diversity and marginalized voices within who they were recruiting in the commission. So it was a very important part of the project, but I'm not sure actually, I couldn't say that there's no, I couldn't say that confidently, but I'll certainly find out, and that's a really good point for thinking about the future. Yeah, and I'd be interested as well if it's something to hear more about that, and if you've kind of encountered that as these kind of projects that end up doing that, because certainly the Children's Commission who took the work forward it was completely based on schools.
So one thing that I was thinking is, maybe you want to leave your email address, or you want to send it to Frances on the chat, and you can follow up as well on that piece of information. Gillian, yeah, you're going to be next, and then there are another 2 questions in the chat.
Okay, I'm going to jump in very quickly, and it may well be more for information. I'm a town planner. The legislation in Scotland has now said that we have to do play sufficiency assessments. All 34 councils are going to have to do the process that you've just tested. I would welcome a conversation with you, and maybe a conversation with you in the Scottish Government, because we've been trying in Glasgow, which is where I work, to get through to our education, and we've done some pilots and experiments of how you talk to the under 18s, and we piloted with the 3 to 9-year-olds and tried to turn the questions that we need to ask them into games. But we're also working with some of the other councils to try and make sure that we don't end up with it being a consultant-led Excel spreadsheet, ask the parents. And no council can have a development plan to decide any of its planning applications until it has a place efficiency assessment, until it's talked to the children. And at the end of the process, we have to talk to children as well. And you seem to have cracked how you talk to children. So the process you've developed, it would be really good to have that conversation with you about it and how it kind of could possibly roll out across Scotland, because we're going to have to do something, and it would be better to do something that's right than something that's wrong. But that has to talk to a diverse range of children from 18 to 0. It has to talk to the children, not their parents. It has to capture their views. And I've already, just to give you a quick example, when I talked to our parks people, I said, I need to talk to the children about the places they use. They said, can you tell them not to talk about cemeteries? And I said, you can't rule out the cemeteries if that's the place that the children want to go and sit and hang out with their friends. And that's the place they tell us about. So there are juxtapositions between what the professionals want to rule out because they haven't maintained it and don't think children should be there, and where the children actually are. But what you've just described would be really, really useful in every council doing its statutory duty that has to do about place efficiency and doing it properly and making the children's voices centre. So yeah, I will reach out to you, Frances, because I think it would be a really useful conversation.
That would be great. And I think, I mean, that's really exciting that that's happening. And one of the kind of whole points of the project is not just about this specific locality, but is to be capturing learning and trying to change practice across Scotland and beyond. So we're really keen to do a lot of outreach with, you know, councils and feed into other processes. So that would be fantastic, Gillian. I've just dropped my email in the chat.
Yeah, I've just picked it up. I will send you an email and tell you what we've tried to do and link you into the kind of group, because just very quickly, we've got Fife, Angus, North Lanarkshire and ourselves in a kind of bit of a pilot to work it out, which would mean that we're getting from the very, very urban to the very, very rural children if we are going to try something. So I'll reach out with an email and we can carry this conversation on. Thank you.
Amazing. Great. I should just say as well, hopefully I have already said, but this work, the actual design of these activities and everything really came from Northern Star Associates, who they've worked on behalf of us for this project, and they've really done an amazing job of designing these processes, and we've had incredible feedback as well from all of the commissioners. You know, people have just absolutely loved this process, and I very much, my role has been pretty, you know, facilitative of the process rather than designing it. So they're really good people to speak to as well. But yeah, absolutely, first check, yeah, let's catch up. And our report will be out in a couple of weeks as well, so you can see everything in full. But I would really point you to the website, which I'll drop in the chat now, and the resources that Zoe and WEAll Global have put together to help put this into practice.
Thank you, Frances, and thank you, Gillian. That is, knowing that there's going to be continuity, it is always why we're bringing us all together in this space. There is a question from Liz. I don't know if you would like to unmute yourself and maybe you want to ask the question directly. Maybe Liz has left it already, but she was asking, are the groups going to continue and be involved in a review process?
So
I'm here, Frances.
Oh, sorry. There are so many. I had everybody on the same screen. I'm sorry, Liz, go ahead. Go ahead.
No worries. It took me a while to get on there. Yeah, I'm interested in the, you know, what next kind of thing. You know, is it going to continue this? You know, sometimes you get projects and they're a one-off type thing, and then is there a follow-up, and are it going to be the same groups? And this, yeah. What's next?
Yeah, absolutely. So with this project in Leckham specifically, yeah, it's absolutely carrying on. So we just got funding to carry on until the end of 2024. It's funded by Catanac, who are focused on early childhood. And so that's fantastic. So at the moment, what we're doing is we haven't really planned out exactly what it's going to look like, because my time has kind of run out on the project, and we're hiring, really hoping to hire someone local as well to kind of be the project lead, still working with the associates I mentioned. So we've still kind of to do the planning really with the commission, and with the council and local agencies on looking at what the next stage looks like. That absolutely it will be carrying on. I think part of that work will be to work with this locality group that the council is putting together, because we don't just want it to be a project that exists for as long as it's funded and just keep getting funding, but that it's changing kind of council processes. So a big part of the work of whatever the commissions look like going forward will be to kind of feed into that work. But it will be carrying on, and we just sort of haven't figured out the details yet. Absolutely. And in terms of the review with commissioners, I guess, right now everything we've done really, like the design, apart from when you're first designing it, because you don't have those relationships yet, has really been done with the commissioners. Even the report and everything was just basically a write-up of everything we had all done together. And then I sent that to people with, like, at every stage of the process being like, is this what you wanted it to be? It's so everything is supposed to be that we're kind of pulling together what they are saying and their priorities. And in terms of review, I think we probably won't, because it's so iterative, really. We're just like, we've achieved what we've done in that short time, and now we'll be focusing on what we can achieve at the time we've got. But yeah, certainly I think if there's like a kind of longer term project review, that would be, I would hope it would be that we would design it with the commissioners for sure.
Sorry, who was that funder? Catanac, did you say?
Catanac, yeah.
I've not heard of them. Catanac. How do you?
Yeah, I'll
So Stephanie, I was wondering, before I pass it on to Joy, if she has kind of responded to your questions about how the project is being evaluated, or if you want to get into more details on those points. I don't know if you want to.
I guess just the fact that you were sort of saying that it's quite difficult to kind of contact the council a lot of the time. And so, it was just, I guess it's the ongoing understanding how the project in itself will be evaluated and the successes of it.
Yeah.
I guess it's who decides what success looks like, I guess.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah,
Children?
We've got the outcomes that we've agreed with the funder, but they are quite loose, because they're about kind of evidence of influencing and changing processes. And I think that's probably all up for agreement really at the moment. It's I guess one thing I would say is with the policy design guide process, and this is not really my kind of normal way of working. I'm not really we have a lot of like emergent people in this space, it's everything's being created and we're experimenting as we go, and I really like very winnable goals and measurable KPIs and everything. But I do think this work kind of does need to be quite organic and iterative, and because it's so much about relationships and what's possible and what kind of comes from what you do. So much about the project has had to change as we've gone. And actually, if anything, one of my learnings would be, I think we should have like every quarter gone, okay, so what are we actually doing here? Because for a lot of the time, I felt like it wasn't going that well because it wasn't achieving what my goals I'd set for it. But actually, if I'd changed the goalposts, it would have been very successful, but the changing goalposts, like now I wouldn't look back, I would look back and say it was enormously successful, but just in a different way from what we thought. So that's a very rambling answer to that. That's a very good question.
Joey.
Thank you. Hi, Francis. I just wanted to ask, because it was so interesting seeing this process, because I feel like you often hear about, involving young people or children or raising marginalized voices and not actually seeing how it's done. So super interesting. And it would just be helpful to know if between us on this call and people watching it, did you encounter any, I guess, like cynical people along the way, especially adults, people who didn't really buy into the process? And I guess if you did, how did you go about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We absolutely did. And I think that was one of the things I found most challenging about it, actually, was the fact that people were right to be cynical. Like they were coming with an informed, healthy cynicism, actually. And I was coming into the project like the person who creates the website, writes the copy, going, look what we're going to do, this visionary thing, and this is the amazing design, which means it's going to do this. But over time, I found myself being like kind of absorbing that cynicism, because it isn't cynicism, actually. It's like the experience of not being able to participate in the decisions that affect your life. And Lethem as well, because there's a lot of it scores quite highly on indices of multiple deprivation, but also has like a really vibrant, coherent, active like community who come together and get things done. So it has been the target of a lot of kind of pilot projects, and people are really interested in that area. So I think they've been asked what they want a lot of stuff and not seen anything happen, or there was a community buyout of something and then that kind of fell through when the council changed. That's kind of going better again now, but I think that was really challenging, because actually to get people to participate, they need to believe that it's going to be different, and it could be different. But actually, if it was that easy for it to be different, people working in the councils are good people who go into it because they want to change things, and deliver for people, but it often isn't that easy. So yeah, I think my usual approach is just belligerent like optimism, and there was a lot in the design of the process that was deliberately trying to kind of bring these power dynamics to the fore from the start, so that we weren't kind of raising expectations and then nothing happening. But I would say, like, through the process, people have been, I think, seeing the quality of the work and seeing that it isn't just a consultation, and that actually they're on a level playing field with senior people at the council who are being really frank about what they're trying to do and the challenges they face. That isn't just a PR spiel. I think that really helps. And I do think the quality of the sort of facilitation as well, it was really just fantastically put together. So I think that really helped, and I think people found it valuable in itself. It was almost kind of like a development journey for people, and like just thinking about things in an interesting way, and so I think that helped. But yeah, I definitely say that is a challenge. But hopefully, as soon as it kind of succeeds, now I think people are really, really happy, and we haven't even told everyone yet about the community warden. So yeah, I think that'll be a lot easier going forward for sure.
Thank you, Frances. So I cannot believe it, but there are only 5 minutes left, and Tanya has her hand up. Tanya, please.
Thanks, Anna. Frances, thanks very much. That was really intriguing. I'm supporting a project probably in a similar way to you. I work at the Cairngorms National Park Authority, and we're working on a project that involves 24 project programs across the national park, and that's 5 local authorities, and one of which is about we've worked with our high schools in the development phase, and we've used the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals and invited the high schools to essentially look at those priorities and create their own vision for their communities. That's their school, and extending that out to their school communities. And having created their vision, then looking at an action plan that they might want to deliver over a 5-year period. So we've got the benefit of having a longer time frame to look at. But what I really like is that you've not started with the high schools. You've started with some of the groups that we hope to go out to. So it would be great. Will we receive a copy of the slides?
Yes, yeah.
That would be lovely. And yeah, maybe we can catch up and just share some learning and some practice. That would be really interesting to find out a bit more. Thank you.
That would be great. And the report will launch, I need to set a date for it, but definitely by the end of the first week of April. So yeah, just if you keep out your eyes on our Twitter and stuff, and I'll sign up to our emails, you'll get that. So.
Thank you so much, Tanya, as well, for this connection. This is, again, I know that there are going to be many follow-ups after this event, so thank you so much for sharing with Tanya, Spessin, and Gillian and Snow. Before we finish this very first local to global, if there was somebody who has not shared what you know, it would add value as well, and it would be very good for everybody to know, please take your time and unmute yourself and let us know before we say goodbye for today. Oh, good. Oh, well, so you're going to receive a recording of this session. You're going to receive information that is being all written down in the chats. I know that you all have Frances' contact to follow up the conversations that have been initiated here. As I mentioned, this is the very first one, but there's going to be one already local to global in April 18, run by WEAll Iberia, the hub that it embeds Spain and Portugal. And this one in particular is going to be, let me see if this is going to show up correctly. Let me see if you can see it. These are going to be your next speakers in April: citizen-led carbon budget management, how to effectively cap emissions and incorporate the limit in your daily life. So Susana Martin Belmonte and Neus Casajuan, both from WEAll Iberia, will be joining us and sharing all about it. And I hope that I'm going to see again many of your faces, or you're going to be able to share with people around you who would love to participate in that conversation. It's been a pleasure to have you here. Frances, I cannot say thank you enough for everything that you have shared. We're looking forward to see that report coming and being launched, and we'll keep you all updated with that report as well. And again, thank you so much for participating today and for your sharings. Goodbye, everybody.